Welcome to the world today. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Coming up within the half hour. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says he will not betray his country as the U.S. continues to push for a peace deal with Russia. 41 people die in relentless rain and floods in central Vietnam. Past geopolitical analyst Edward Opper reviews the U.S. congressional hearing on the redesignation of Nigeria as country of particular concern. Let's begin the world today. Welcome again. A defiant President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine says he will not betray his country as the U.S. continues to push for a peace deal with Russia. He was making the statement in an address to the nation. Zelensky says he's working constructively with the U.S. on the proposal. In the address that lasted 10 minutes, the Ukrainian president warned that Ukraine might face a very difficult choice, either losing its dignity or risk losing a key partner. It comes as President Zelensky faces pressure to agree to the Trump administration's 28-point peace plan for ending the war with Russia, which includes a number of red lines for Ukraine. Moscow, on the other hand, says it's yet to receive anything official from Washington on the actual proposition. A widely leaked U.S. plan includes proposals that Kyiv had previously ruled out, such as ceding areas of the eastern Donetsk region that it still controls, reducing its army in size, and pledging not to join NATO. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov says Russia remains completely open to peace talks. We move on now to Vietnam, where at least 41 people have been killed as a central part of the country battles relentless rains and floods. More than 52,000 homes have been submerged in the deluge, and 500,000 households and businesses have been without power. Tens of thousands of residents have been evacuated from the flood-affected regions. Central Vietnam received rainfall in excess of 1.5 meters over the past 3 days, rising beyond the 1993 flood peak of 5.2 meters in some parts. Vietnam was also victim of typhoons Kalmegi and Boaloy, which left a trail of death and destruction over the past few weeks. Beyond identifying Nigeria as a country of particular concern, the U.S. Congress Subcommittee on Africa on Thursday held a high-stake hearing on President Donald Trump's redesignation of Nigeria. Witnesses provided insights into the serious insecurity situation facing Nigeria as testimonies were taken from a Nigerian Catholic bishop, civil society groups, and a survivor of one of the incidents in Benue State, Nigeria's north-central region. The debate over Nigeria's return to the U.S. CPC list triggered sharp divisions in Congress, with lawmakers split between framing the crisis as a Christian genocide and warning against a dangerous oversimplification of the country's complex violence.
Exclusively on Nigeria.
Today's sitting of the U.S. Congress Subcommittee on Africa gave an opportunity to discuss the several attacks by the terrorist groups in different communities in Nigeria.
I want to thank our distinguished witnesses for being here today to bring light and scrutiny to this unfolding religious freedom catastrophe and to proffer ways to mitigate and to end the violence and the hate.
The most touching ones are from the Middle Belt, where a Catholic bishop narrates the attacks by terrorist groups.
Thousands more have been displaced, some adopted or subjected, with entire villages razed and churches destroyed. My own village of Aondana in Gwe West local government was attacked and several of my relatives killed on May 22nd, 2025. An entire convent of Reverend Sisters of the Clarisha Missionaries was displaced, along with the local Catholic parish. Within the days following that attack, nearby villages like Naka also witnessed attacks. In fact, on the 24th May 2025, one of my priests, Father Solomon Atongu, was shot and left to die in the pool of his blood.
The committee acknowledges that it's not only Christians that are under attack, as even the Muslim community is not spared.
Nigeria is facing multiple different security challenges in various parts of the country, including violent extremist groups in the northeast, criminal banditry in the northwest, and across the country, farmer-herder conflict in the Middle Belt, and other intercommunal violence in central and northern regions. Several factors are driving these conflicts. Yes, ethnicity and religion play a role in some cases, but other dynamics like poor governance, resource competition, climate change, and population pressures are important drivers that need to be addressed.
The lack of response has created an atmosphere of impunity where Christians' continue to live in constant threat and fear.
In his testimony to the committee, Jonathan Pratt, former U.S. ambassador to Djibouti, describes the situation as complex, insisting on a more focused approach to the issues.
Terrorists, separatists, bandits, and criminal militias in Nigeria wreak havoc throughout the country, with ongoing attacks often deliberately targeting Christian communities. In addition to the violent Islamic extremism and banditry experienced in Nigeria's Middle Belt, there has been a surge in violent attacks across northern Nigeria by violent extremist organizations like ISIS West Africa, ISIS Sahel, Boko Haram, Jainim, and Al-Qaeda affiliate Ansaru, and Lakurawa. The ongoing violence is a problem of prioritization for the government of Nigeria. Although its military and police are engaged and taking significant losses in their counterterrorism efforts in the Northeast, the Nigerian government has not done enough to effectively combat violence in the Middle Belt.
This is certainly not a good time for Nigeria, but some of the members of Congress say they are optimistic on the way forward for the country.
Aid is important, and this should be for the victims of Fulani herder militia attacks, and this should be distributed through trusted local providers, including through the churches on the ground that are currently one of the main aid providers to the survivors of these attacks. And it's just, again, tragic and ironic that productive farmers now need food aid since they have been driven from their Middle Belt farms. 4, sanctions against those aiding, abetting, and granting impunity to the Fulani herding militias, including those sanctions should include high-level officials in the criminal justice system and the military. The U.S. should gather intelligence regarding official responses to the Fulani herder militias and review possible visa and Magnitsky sanctions for those aiding and abetting. The Fulani warlords' names are known or knowable. Out of all the, I think it's important to understand that out of all the violent attacks by Fulani herder militias, there have been only a few arrests.
I expect, as we're cooperating with the government of Nigeria on what those tools will be, if there is specific U.S. government programs or assistance that will require a waiver, and through agreement in our cooperative relationship with the government of Nigeria on what will be effective and successful, that we may need to seek waivers for some programs.
Strengthening the military and reforming the institutional weaknesses in Nigeria will indeed serve as a guarantee to the U.S. Congress and the government that Nigeria is serious about tackling the issue of insecurity, albeit Nigeria needs help.
Let's bring in geopolitical analyst Edward Okpa. He's in Texas, the United States. Edward, thanks for joining us on the program today. The purpose of the congressional hearing is for Congress to present, at the end of it, to present the U.S. president with a report to help him make a decision on Nigeria. What do you think would be the suggestion for President Donald Trump following yesterday's hearing?
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a subcommittee on Africa, and then, they get to go to the full committee, and then, the House will deliberate, and then the House will, based on what that deliberation is, will make a recommendation. Then the Senate may weigh, the Senate may weigh in. So this is just the starting of a process. You could see in that deliberation there were opposing views. Some people agree, some people don't agree. I think it's up to Nigeria leadership because, the killing, as much as it is all about the Christians, Muslims have lost their life. Nigeria has to have a comprehensive plan on public safety. It cannot be a side talk. It cannot be a side agenda, because if Nigerians live in a sieged environment, they're not going to be able to give their best to their country of birth and the country they have chosen to live in. So the president has to come in with the support of the National Assembly and deploy resources where resources is needed. The Nigeria police obviously doesn't have the tool or the capacity to deal with this. That's why you have the military, and it is a very bad optics that the military of a country that's supposed to defend the country, in terms of external attack, is fighting Nigerians. I mean, that has been going on. I guess since, what is his name, Jonathan got in there, and then Buhari came in saying he was going to deal with this, and now we have Tinubu, and Tinubu's 2 years obviously has shown the weaknesses in the public safety or security infrastructure of Nigeria. So Nigerians have to be honest with themselves and deal with this. It's no longer, whether you're a Muslim or Christian, lives are being lost. I was in Abuja recently and I saw cattlemen with AK-47. Why would you allow cattlemen to have AK? Who authorized them? Nobody's talking about that. So if a goat farmer is a goat farmer allowed to carry gun, why is it just specifically for the cattlemen? So Nigerians have to address that, because the evidence is there. And these are the ones that when they get into your village or your farms, if you try to stop them, they're going to shoot you, they're going to kill you. So Nigeria have to start publishing data on who gets killed, where they got killed, and begin to make this thing as a factual evidence, as not just, it's not there, it's not happening. Nigeria is now, in a spotlight, and that light is not good for it.
Yeah, and when you say Nigeria, I suppose you're talking about Nigerian leaders, because Nigerians themselves have been trying to put pressure on the government to do some of these things that you're talking about. But apart from highlighting the deficiencies in government efforts to curb these attacks, because the government does say it's doing something, the U.S. State Department says the U.S. will be partnering with Nigeria with the Nigerian government, I must specify, to develop a joint task force aimed at addressing allegation of Christian persecution in Nigeria. Nigerians don't have much confidence in their government. There is a trust deficit right now, considering what has been going on and the fact that there have been attacks in the past 3 days. Do you think, however, that collaboration will still happen in light of some of the revelations in Congress and some of the attacks that have happened this week?
I think it will happen. This is a process. This is a conversation. Hopefully it's going to lead to a better outcome. I think in order to desensitize this, what is going on, the emphasis should be more like Nigerians are getting killed. It's not just the Christians, the Muslims as well are getting killed. And because if we just make it more about the Christians, then the Muslims, we're going to feel so. So let Nigerians admit, okay, killing of one Nigerian because of their ethnicity or because of their religious belief is more than enough. It doesn't have to be a genocide. Hundreds or thousands or millions don't have to die before the government steps up. So I think the message should be Nigerians are getting killed in their country because of their religious belief. And that could be they are Muslims, they are Christians, there are people who don't believe in either of those two religions. So when you do that, then you call on all these people. You have a lot of traditional rulers. You keep asking the question, what are they relevant? You could do what most countries have done. You give any traditional ruler, if this number of people get killed in your area of authority, whatever that authority is, we're going to remove you from office, so that they too may have some responsibility, and they too may have, be put to some test to see whether they are relevant. If not, to remove them. You have the Sultan of Sokoto. What statement has he made? The Emir of Kano, the Obi of Onitsha, the Amanabo of whomever, the people in the West. Nigeria don't need to be distracted by institutions that are not adding to the welfare of Nigeria. But since you can't remove them, then give them some task. If people get killed in your area, if there's any government money that's supposedly come to you, we're going to deduct it from them, so that they too can engage their own community and people and say, hey, enough of this. We cannot live this way, because they too are in danger. You got a soldier that a general that got killed. Some emirs or local chiefs have been kidnapped and killed. So now the government of Tinubu, because Tinubu is the guy, has to step up and make a profound statement. Enough of this. You know, if he doesn't do this, chances of him getting re-elected is going to be very slim. Then in terms of the collaboration, what collaboration do you want America to do? Do you want America to bring in armed forces, soldiers to into it, or do you want America to bring police resources? Nigeria has to decide that. In a civilian government, the role of the military is supposed to be in the backyard. What you see now in Nigeria is a lot of soldiers on the streets carrying guns. They shouldn't be. Enhance the Nigerian police, find a way to make them more relevant and effective, and then create regional forces, and in each of these regional forces, give them the tools. If the soldiers want to fight in Nigeria, let them change their uniform from being soldiers and become police people. Because in a civilian government, police is what you need. It's not the army. You don't need the Nigerian army using helicopter to attack Nigerians. It's not good. It shows that Nigerians haven't figured out the difference between when they were in a military role and when they were in a civilian government. And this is more than a quarter of a century of experimenting with the civilian thing. It hasn't given Nigerians the confidence. And as like you said, Nigerians don't trust their leaders. You look at every senator, governor, when they go, how many police officers follow them. So what Tinubu has to say is limited. A senator, one policeman. House member, one policeman. No more entourage. So that they too can begin to have the sense that their own life may be in jeopardy. Then they can go into those chambers and be serious about what it is they do for Nigeria. It's not about them. It's a joke when you see a senator has like 20, 30 police people following them around.
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying. I think that someone also, one of the respondents at the congressional hearing yesterday did allude to this, the decentralization of the police, the fact that we should have more police response to some of this violence. And someone also rightly pointed out that we really haven't heard the Inspector General of Police addressing any of these issues. Security chiefs, of course, need to come forward with their response as to what is going on and what they're doing. Edward Opa, thank you so much for speaking with us on The World Today.
Can I inject something before you go? You know, when Tafa Balogun was the police IG, I wrote him about how to enhance the Nigerian police, because I had just graduated from the Dallas Police Citizens Academy. And then in 2003, when I did the FBI Citizens Academy, I also wrote, and then what is his name, Onovo was there. I even specifically asked Onovo to make Enugu Police College the Center for Terrorism Training. But Onovo was so ignorant and so afraid, and he didn't even take up on that recommendation. These are things that I have done, and I have record of having done this. Nigeria, you see, of all of that testimony, there was not even a Nigerian American invited. Nigerians don't pay attention to some of their sons and daughters that are in this country that have resources, that have access and relationship that can help them manage the bad public relations that's going on in Nigeria. It is not good. Other people don't do it. Respect your own prophets before you seek prophets from other places. It will be good for the image of Nigeria. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Edward. Appreciate your analysis and your thoughts on the issue. Beyond our shores now, Spain, once considered Europe's problem child, is now emerging as an economic powerhouse. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Spain's deficit to GDP ratio will fall below Germany's. What's behind Spain's success, and what can Germany learn from this? For more, we're joined now by the DW Vada Imran in Berlin. Vada, always great to see you. Do tell us why Spain is outperforming some of its European peers.
Thanks for having me. Yes, let's just jump into the numbers. So looking at the GDP, Spain's forecast for this year is 2.9% growth. Now compare that to Germany's predicted 0.2% growth, and you can see that the difference is massive. This trend is also set to continue for the coming years. And like you said, for the first time in nearly 2 decades, Spain's deficit to GDP ratio will be lower than that of Germany. One of the big reasons Spain's economy is doing better is its approach to migration. Spain, unlike some of its European peers, including Germany, has remained largely pro-migration. There are more than 9 million immigrants in Spain, with a yearly increase of 600,000 people. Now, many of these migrants come from South America, and most of them do speak Spanish already, so removing that core language barrier. Another reason is its growing investment in renewables. According to the government of Spain, wholesale electricity prices have fallen 40% in the first half of this year. And a third big reason is innovation. Now, both in the digital startup culture and also in the green transition. And there are many other reasons, but these seem to be the top three behind Spain's success.
Right. Vada, what can Germany learn from Spain's example?
I think Germany could learn to be a lot faster in their response. Looking at investment in renewables, for example, Germany has also made major investments and strides, but the implementation is still riddled with bureaucracy and grid challenges. So the impact of this investment in green energy hasn't been really seen yet. Another example is also exposure to U.S. tariffs. Now, the whole of Europe is impacted by President Trump's tariffs, but Spain's economy is a bit protected because they have less direct trade exposure to the U.S. Spain's trade is more geared towards the Eurozone. So in that way, they're also doing better. An economist we spoke to said that because Spain's economy has seen more shocks, it's just more resilient. And with Germany, that's not necessarily the case. So the response here is just naturally slower. So what Germany can really learn is removal of potential hurdles and faster response.
So how are the Spanish residents reacting to this news?
Well, even though the economy growing is a good news, the residents of the country are still really struggling. In Spain, the average person is still poorer than the average European. There is a massive housing crisis, and unemployment is still one of the highest in the continent. So the issues on the ground are still very much there. There's also a very big difference in approach between the government, which is rather pro-migration, and the people, which have mixed concerns. A poll conducted by El País showed that 40% of the people surveyed are still worried about migration, making this their fifth biggest concern. Other major concerns are inflation, housing issues, inequality, and unemployment. But these issues also extend to migrants who worry that they will be the first to be axed when it's time to do job cuts.
Right, Vada, thanks again for joining us on the program. Back here in Africa, world leaders have started arriving in Johannesburg, South Africa, ahead of the G20 summit this weekend. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Brazil's President Inácio Lula da Silva are just some of the leaders who are among the 20 biggest economies who touched down in Joburg. One notable absence, though, is the U.S. President Donald Trump, who long ago decided not to attend over widely discredited claims that white people are being persecuted in South Africa. President Cyril Ramaphosa has criticized the U.S. for boycotting the conference, making a thinly veiled swipe at the U.S., saying no country can be allowed to bully another. President Ramaphosa, however, says there's a notice from the United States, a change of mind about participating in one shape, form, or the other in the summit. The White House has clarified the U.S. will send a diplomatic delegation to the handover ceremony at the end of the summit, but will not be participating in the talks.
There is not a shift. The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. The ambassador or the representative of the embassy in South Africa is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.